thing that Cars 2 does ultimately, and that's just that there's no great reason for it to exist there is a little bit more of a one because the plot is obviously very car centric, but it just almost feels like it would be a better film if it were around like humans that liked to drive cars, or maybe even like a fast animal like cheetahs or leopards or bunnies or something that liked to race, and they like something like that, because it just felt really weird to like bring those cars to life, and like how do they exist in this universe, how do they do all these things that a car couldn't do, like even in like obviously the huge suspension of disbelief uh where the cars are alive um and can walk around and do things, still with the parts they have, it's like how do they do that? There's so many like big plot holes right there, and then it's also a little harder to relate to the cars, I feel like, than it would be if they were just something a little more believable to be alive. And I think that's really the reason that it doesn't get as much credit. I really do, because when you look at the story, it's a very powerful, actually, tale of like redemption um, and arrogance and learning, literally, yeah, learning that you're not the most important thing, and creating your own family, and all this stuff with like the Doc Hudson and I mean, really, because it's a story about a guy who has it all and is on his way to the top, and he's this hot new racer, and then he ends up being humbled, and gets into this place where he has to do all this work for these people that he hates, and then he ends up growing to love them, and then he has to decide what's more important, and all, like, it's really a good movie, and people treat it like it's trash sometimes, and it doesn't make sense, because when you look at it, like, I don't know, it affects me when I watch it. It's a good movie. And it deserves number 10. Granted, Pixar's made so many great movies. I'm not trying to put it up in the top contenders, but it deserves its number 10 spot very well. It is a good, well-made film by Pixar. So no more to say about that. Moving on. Um, Now we're getting to the point where I start to hurt by how low I have to put some of these, because I love these movies, but there's so many good ones. Um, Number 9 is The Incredibles. It is only my number 9 because of the movies above it. There's no other. If it were in a lot of other types of lists, it would be number one, two, three. Um, but in the Pixar list, it's number 9. The Incredibles is such a great film. It somehow manages to be one of the best superhero films, honestly, without using any actual superhero from any type of comic lore. It created all these superheroes by itself. Granted, a large amount of them are clearly heavily influenced by real superheroes. None of them are, and all of them that are influenced by them have very clear deviations from them. And it's a great movie, once again, about family. Um, and it's just got such an interesting plot. Like, it builds this world, it establishes really clear rules, and like the way their society works, and the hidden superheroes that aren't allowed to do work anymore. And it's a really interesting concept that I don't think anybody had ever really thought to do before. It's like, well, what would that be like if there was a world full of superheroes, and then one day the government just decided, like, yeah, no, you don't get to do that anymore. You're done. And then the people with superpowers just have to live with that. And that was really interesting to see, honestly. And it's full of very relatable characters that you love, and who are really forced to deal with to deal with like being once again at the top of the world, and not having that anymore, and having to live an everyday life, and be okay with that, and learning what that means, and what it means to be a family, and to care about each other through the ups and through the downs. And I don't know, it's a I don't think I really need to defend The Incredibles to you guys. The Incredibles is a great movie. Number 9 in the Pixar. this next movie I just rewatched today because I actually had not seen this since it came out like 10 years ago. And for some reason, I think, I mean, maybe because I was 9, 10 years old when it came out, but at the time that I watched it, I definitely did not get the significance out of it that I got this time. And I'm very glad that I went and rewatched it because I probably would have put it much lower on my list. I did have it down at like number 12 before I rewatched it. Now it's number 8, and even that, like, I almost want to bump it up, but it's got to be number 8. That's Ratatouille. Ratatouille is a very good movie, actually. That it has a lot of the things I've been talking about already. Talking about themes about friendship and about family, but then also this one's very about, yeah, like following your dreams and not letting the people around you decide who you are. You are who you are, regardless of that, and that's really nice. And then it gives you these really interesting characters with Remy and Linguini. Um, and a very interesting story with Linguini end up being the owner of the restaurant, um, and there's betrayal and redemption and all that kind of stuff. And it's also very like culturally interesting, the way Pixar is trying to represent France, and the way they build the city of Paris with the animation is just beautiful. And then the whole thing with them representing like taste, like when Remy eats food, about like all the different tastes being like these different sparks of color, and like there's just so much goodness in this movie actually, and it's really a gem. And I did not realize that it was. I think a lot of people don't give this one enough credit in the Pixar movies, and so that's why it's at number 8 for me for sure. Um, Now number 7. So now we're getting into like every one of these next movies actually, every one of the ones that are left have like iconic characters that you would recognize, and anybody would recognize immediately anywhere, because they're such great movies and they stand the test of time so well that they're just like by generations of people. Well, I guess there's only like maybe one or two generations that would have that right now because they're not that old. But mark my words, in 30 years we'll still be talking about some of these movies. I'm sure of it, honestly. That is Monsters Inc. is number 7. Uh, Mike and Sully, some of the most relatable characters Pixar's ever made for sure. And they really like Sully with his big ego and Mike with his like awkward personality and his little quirks, and the two of them being a pairing that are like very explosive but really care about each other at the same time, and like that whole thing is just so interesting to watch on its own. And then you have the backdrop of that whole interesting plot with Randall and the once again the very like terrifying concepts that Pixar is like not does not back down from and will introduce in their movies. With the whole again, here's the thing: some of these movies it's been a few years since I've seen, but like I remember the plot and the characters so well that I feel comfortable ranking them. But whatever they call it, the scream extractor, is that what it is? The thing that he makes that's like basically just gonna kill Boo, like just straight up kill Boo, just so that he can get this. And then they're showing him like the color leave Mike Wazowski's face when he gets like it gets used on him once by accident and all that, and like it's she's really, and then he almost kills him a few times, but then Water News ends up being the villain. It's full of twists and turns and really interesting concepts. This whole monster world existing as like a parallel dimension, and you go through your door, and the whole door thing is really interesting too. Doctor Who crossover, anyone? But yeah, no, it's Monsters Inc. That's what I want to put higher. I wish I could, but I just can't put it above some of these other ones. And I initially had it slightly lower, but I shifted a few things around a little bit. But like I remember, like I think that's the one that I placed initially at like probably like number 9 or something. And my girlfriend was like, "Oh, that hurts," and I was like, "It hurts me too, but I have to put it somewhere, and these are all so great." Anyway, so moving on, number 6. Wally. Uh, Man, Wally. Here's the thing. Wally has some third act issues. I say third act issues. The third act's great. It's definitely like a big step below what the rest of the movie is, and that is the only. I really think if the rest of the movie was as good, like if the third act was as good as the rest of the movie is, I think Wally would be probably in my top three. Because my wow, is that incredible, and the relationship that they set up that feels so real between Wally and Eve, even though they're robots and they don't even like communicate like with words very well. It's just almost all visual, but it feels like such a human thing, and when obviously it is. I'm not going to get into the science about how robots couldn't actually do that, but it doesn't matter because it feels so relatable and it's so interesting to watch. And they really like dove into this whole concept of like Earth just being uninhabitable, and talking about like human nature and how greedy we get, and like the just being like piles of trash to the sky all over the planet that just made it impossible for humans to live here anymore. And then they flew away, and now they're all like fat giants running around on hovercrafts because they can't walk. I mean, this deal, this tackled some very real human issues in this animated movie about robots that learn to love. That's the thing. This movie did so many different things and did them all so well and so beautifully. And this movie makes you cry. It makes you laugh. It's among Pixar's finest. It's absolutely wonderful. I wish I could even bump it up a little higher and say that it's in the top five, but I really just, with the movies that they've made, I have to say Wall-E is number 6, but very deservedly so. So now we're in the top 5. All 5 of these movies, I would say, are among not just the best Pixar films, not just the best animated films, but among the best films, in my opinion, that have been made in the last good 20 years at least. Honestly. So bear that in mind going into this in my placement of these. Once again, if you guys are Pixar fans, you know which 5 are left. The question is, what order am I going to put them in? That you don't know. So starting off, number 5. Again, I wish I could put all these at number 1. At least these top 5. I really do. They're all so great. But I have to pick an order. Number 5 is Finding Nemo. So yeah, part of the reason Finding Dory is at number 16 is because it felt like such a slap in the face to Finding Nemo, which is such a wonderful movie. That opening scene in Finding Nemo, where Marlin and Nemo's mom are having that very real relationship moment, and you can tell how much they love each other. And then there's the barracuda that comes out of nowhere, and then straight up just knocks Marlin out. And I mean, it is still technically a kids movie, so they don't show the gore or anything. I mean, Marlin's gotten out, he wakes up, and all of their kids but the one and his wife are all dead and eaten. And I remember watching that as a small child. This movie came out when I was 7, I think. Yeah, 7. This movie came out when I was 7, and as a small child, I was just old enough to recognize exactly what had just happened there and be very emotionally affected by it. And that holds to me. That was one of the first times ever, I think, as a kid that I was really I felt real sadness from something a movie did, and I recognized the power of that movie from that. And so that alone is just awesome. But discrediting that completely, even the entire story and the entire the character of Marlin, understand what he's been through, and that he is overprotective of his son, obviously, because he watched all his other children die along with his wife. And also seeing Nemo trying to be his own person and not understanding what his dad's had to go through and just saying like, no, I need to get out there. Obviously, he's correct. And Marlon is a bit of a helicopter parent, but you can understand why, and you really feel for both these characters. And then there's obviously, so when Nemo gets put out, then there's all the interesting characters like in the tank with Nemo, and all the interesting characters that Marlon comes across, along with obviously Dory, who's one of the best sidekicks in a movie because she provides so much comic relief, but then on top of that, like she has so much heart to her, and you can tell that like her and Marlon like throughout this adventure really come to care for each other, and they become family. Um, and That's what the heart of this movie is too. Is that it's about family, um, but I think it's really both. This movie really is about the family that you have and loving them for who they are, and then also the family that you choose, and recognizing that you have two types of family. You have the family that is your blood, you have the family that you choose, and they're both equally important. And obviously the family that is blood is Nemo and Marlin, and then the family that is chosen is Dory and Marlin. And that's all there, and that's fine. And obviously, I haven't even gotten into like the animation and how real the ocean in this movie feels, especially for its time in 2004. The fact that this movie was made at that time and looks as so incredible as it does, it just blows my mind. So yeah, Finding Nemo, rightfully so, number 5 on my Pixar countdown. All right, almost done, guys. We're in the top 4 now. So you guys know, 3 of these movies will have something in common, obviously. So let's start getting into some of these. Number 4, Toy Story 2. This is a lot of people's favorite Toy Story film. I don't quite understand that because it's great. It's amazing. It's, once again, among some of my favorite films of all time. Toy Story 2 is spectacular. However, in the trilogy, to say that it's the best doesn't... It's clearly the worst to me of those three. Of those 3. Not to say that it could be the worst, really, of anything else. But of those 3, it's the worst. And don't get me wrong, it's really interesting that they expand on the relationship between Woody and Buzz, and all these characters, and they introduce Jessie and Bullseye, who are all really interesting, and they've made it a very relatable story about like getting older and like what do you do when you get older? How do you cope with that? How do you learn that even as time goes by, that you're still you and you still maintain the same identity, even if other people choose to see you differently, that you still have family that care about you. Like, it had such great messages. It had great animation, great concepts, went to a lot of interesting places, also really hits you in the feels, like a lot of things. I'm always, one of my favorite Pixar moments of all time is the scene where they're jumping off that plane, and he's talking to Jessie and says the whole, like, just pretend it's the final episode of Woody's Roundup. We never found out how it ended. We got canceled. Let's find out together. And it's like, it has a lot of moments like that. Like, this is a great movie. That being said, it is number 4. It is probably my least favorite Toy Story film. Like I said, all 3 Toy Story movies are some of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. So, moving right on. Number 3, for me, is the one that started it all. 1995's Toy Story. Toy Story is, first it deserves some recognition, just being the first ever movie to be made completely on a computer, with computer animation, digitally done. Nobody thought you could do it before it, and Toy Story proved them wrong, and now there's a whole new genre of movies stemming from this movie, not just in Pixar, but in all places. And it probably would, I'm sure it would have happened eventually, but it may not have happened as soon as it did if it were not for Toy Story coming out as soon as it did. Now, moving on, just talking about Toy Story as a movie, Tom Hanks and Tim Allen do such a good job and have such great chemistry in this movie, um, as Woody and Buzz, and creating these iconic characters. And this was a concept that's now tried to be recreated a few times, with this giving these lifeless objects like feelings and pretending they're real and all that. But this was I mean, nobody, there hadn't been a full length, like, great loved movie about toys coming to life when people weren't around. Um, not not done as well as this, I don't think. I don't know. I'm now just thinking of a few that are kind of like, but I mean, really, like, in a lot of ways, this had very original concepts, and it was a very interesting movie to watch. It had great characters. It really hits you in the feels once again. I think Toy Story is such a great monument in filmmaking. Uh, so it absolutely deserves a high spot on this list. So Toy Story is number three for me. So moving on still, there's the final two movies. So announcing one of them is going to tell you what both of them are if you've been keeping track and you know what Pixar movies there are. Um, I almost want to switch them the last second because, like, I love both these movies so much. They're the two of them. If I made a top 10 favorite, which I might do one day, favorite movies of mine of all time, these top three would all be on it for sure. Um, Number two for me is Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3, I saw for the first time when it came out in 2010. I actually went and saw this one in theaters as well. And when I saw it in 2010, I was about 13. And it really resonated with me then. But I've watched it again as recently as in the past few months, and it resonated with me so much harder. Because this is such a very raw, real movie about talking toys, and it's so incredible that it was able to somehow do that, and give you this piece that was really about, like, growing up and, like, having to, like, accepting that you don't live forever and that you have to go through stages in your life and you have to leave things behind sometimes, and that you can't have everything forever, and just the entire, like, concept of letting go and of loss, and it tackled them so hard. And again, this is a movie that's for kids and adults alike. That's not shying away from these really, like, raw, hard to deal with concepts, and talking about ways that you can deal with them, and what it means to be human by showing you talking toys. It was incredible. I mean, obviously, God, there's not been a darker moment in Pixar, where than the scene where they're all the toys are holding hands in the incinerator, like, just facing oblivion together, like, just, we're all gonna die right now. Okay, we've accepted it. Like, it's so, and you really, like, the first time watching that movie, like, it just, I mean, and don't get me wrong, they totally, like, found a ridiculous way out of it, but you're watching that and, like, you really do believe that the writers are just about to kill them all off right here. You're like, this is it. I'm about to watch all the Toy Story characters die with my own eyes. And it's hard. And I mean, just all the things that are explored in that movie are so powerful. And it really does just deserve a spot on, like, the best movies of all time. Now, moving on from that, if any of you, again, know Pixar movies, you know what's missing from this list. And like I just said, I almost wanted to switch these. I almost wanted to make Toy Story 3 my number one, because these are both such great movies, and I had such a hard time making myself decide. But that being said, I don't think really there's another movie out there that has affected me the way Inside Out did. And Inside Out, I recognize is a much newer one, and some people I think may think that that's a reason for my decision. But keep in mind I put Finding Dory at number 16, and that's even newer. Um, and as well as The Good Dinosaur, that's even newer as well, and that's number 15. Um, uh, Inside Out, man, talk about what I said earlier with the opening up. Talk about ripping your heart out of your chest and showing it to you. Inside Out did that brilliantly. Inside Out took. There's such a thing in our society today with our emotions where we're only allowed to feel certain things at certain times, and you have to try to be happy all the time. And even when you feel sadness creeping on, the way to cure that is to just be happy and make it go away. And really, the way to cure sadness is to be sad sometimes and let that feeling be there, and and admit the fact that life is not always easy, and it's okay to be sad, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be upset about things sometimes, and it's okay to not always feel okay. And that's something that society has not been allowing us to really admit. And the fact that Pixar went and just said, we got something to say about that, and made this movie is incredible to me. And it makes me, I'm about to start tearing up just thinking about some of the scenes in this movie. And that's not even, most people's hardest moment in this movie is when Bing Bong dies. That one didn't even get me, because I saw that coming, and it was moving, but the thing that gets me is just the whole ending where sadness and joy like join hands to make like a bittersweet memory. Because those are the most powerful like moments and memories in your lives, really, when you think about it. They're not the moments when you're just really depressed, and they're not the moments when you're really happy and just like woo and having fun. They're the moments where you're happy to be alive and you're happy about life, but you also have this sadness in you that you're letting come to the surface, and it's all there, and it's so human and so real. And it's just such a beautiful thing that Pixar made this movie that now kids can watch when they're struggling with these things, and when society inevitably keeps trying to tell you you have to be happy all the time and force happiness down your throat and tell you that's all you're allowed to feel, that they have this movie to go to and to see like, oh my god, that's not how I have to live my life. I'm sorry, I went on a rant there about just that aspect of this movie, but just as a movie, obviously, this also works really well. This has such, obviously archetypal characters because they all represent emotions, but they also, even though they feel very three-dimensional in a lot of ways. And they are actually really relatable, and I feel like we've been Joy before. And we understand. I saw something about like Joy actually being the villain of this movie, and don't get me wrong, she's the thing that makes a lot of things go wrong. But I think, at the end, she is the protagonist because she also realizes the flaws of her own ways. But I think we've all been Joy at one point, and Joy represents what society does, shoving it down her throat, and she wants to do that. That's how she knows to keep things running, and she's forced to realize that can't always work throughout the course of this movie. And then, God, the whole scene where she's like saying that she just wanted to make her happy, and she's crying because she can't make the character Riley happy. There's so much in this movie to love. It really, man, I don't know. I might make a best, like my favorite movies of all time list at one point, and if I do, Inside Out might, and spoilers, Inside Out might end up being my favorite. I don't know though. There's a lot of movies to consider, obviously, but Inside Out is what definitely will have a place on that list, if nothing else, because Inside Out is not only one of the best movies ever made, but it's absolutely, the more I feel much after talking about it, I feel much less unsure about it over Toy Story 3. Is absolutely the number one Pixar movie of all time. So this has been a pretty long video. I think I'm looking at this clock right now, and it's about 49 minutes or so. So I hope you guys can sit through it because I really honestly enjoyed talking about those movies. I love Pixar. And I'm gonna do more countdown videos, I think, because that allows me to just talk about a whole bunch of movies and what makes movies good, what makes movies enjoyable to me, what I like about movies, and talk about movies that I like. And that's awesome, and that's what this channel is all about. So we'll see when I make the next video. I'll try to make it fairly soon. Let me know if there's any countdowns you want me to do. Ones I've had thought about is I've thought about doing like Harry Potter or Star Wars, because those are both franchises with a lot of movies in it that I like, that I can talk about. But I really like suggestions about more movie things that I can do countdowns on, or just movie videos that I can make in general, whether it's a review or a discussion about certain types of things, or TV even. Movies on TV is my channel name. I want to talk more about TV as well. I want to keep expanding this channel and doing new things with it, and keep saving up to get better equipment so I can do more and more things. Because I'm really learning the more I'm doing this. I really enjoy it. Even when there's like 2 of you watching, that's fine. Because it's fun and it's something nice to do with my free time, that really helps me grow my love for film and share it with the world. So thank you for allowing me to take up some of your time with this. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like and a comment if you would. Give it a share. Don't do any of those things if you didn't like it. But always give me feedback if you're willing to. I'd always love to hear things that I can do better, things that you like that I did well, all of that jazz. I will see you again real soon. For now, bye-bye.